The Nigerian government announces it has reached a ceasefire deal with Boko Haram, which will include the release of 219 girls kidnapped in April. In Hong Kong, the government says it will begin negotiations with students after clashes between police and pro-democracy protests renew in the Asian financial hub. And countries around the world step up action to protect themselves from the spread of the Ebola virus. Good afternoon, I'm Shachar Peled. You're watching i24 News. We start with breaking news. At least 2 Egyptian troops have been killed on Saturday in the collapse of a smuggling tunnel that runs along the border with the Gaza Strip, an Egyptian military official said. The troops had discovered the tunnel earlier Saturday and entered to explore it. The official said 1 officer and a soldier were killed, while 2 others are still missing. We will update you, of course, on additional information as the story develops. The Nigerian government announced it struck a ceasefire deal with Islamic terror group Boko Haram that would ensure the release of more than 200 schoolgirls abducted by the group back in April. The release of the girls is a part of a larger ceasefire agreement with Boko Haram that has been responsible for scores of attacks in the country. Meanwhile, neighboring Cameroon announced that more than 100 Boko Haram fighters have been killed in the country's north. i24 News reporter Danny Swibel has the details.
This news is starting on a very happy note, as the federal government and the Boko Haram sect have agreed to a ceasefire deal. The agreement geared towards the release of the Chibok schoolgirls abducted by Boko Haram about 6 months ago.
Negotiations between the 2 parties had taken place in Saudi Arabia and were aided by Chadian President Idris Deby and high-level officials from Cameroon.
From the discussions, the terrorists indicated their desire and willingness for peace and to discuss and resolve all associated issues.
According to Boko Haram's Danladi Ahmadu, the girls are in good condition and unharmed, but would not elaborate on the negotiations and the conditions under which the girls would be released. Some 276 girls were seized from their dormitories at the government girls' secondary school in the remote town of Chibok in Borno State in northeastern Nigeria on the night of April 14th. This prompted international outrage and unity to get them back. Months later, the trail went cold. Goodluck Jonathan has been highly criticized, both at home and abroad, for his slow reaction to the kidnapping of the girls, as well as the instability of Nigerian troops to stamp out the violence by Boko Haram, which claims to be fighting to establish an Islamic State in the Muslim-majority part of northern Nigeria.
And a short while ago, we spoke with Sarah Firth, journalist for Arise TV, who explained more about the doubts surrounding the reported deal.
As yet, there's no official statement from the Boko Haram leader, and I think until we actually get that, there will of course be big questions over the credibility of the deal. Why would Boko Haram be willing to accept this truce now? We heard this being announced by a very senior member of the military, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, Alex Bidai. That was at the end of a 3-day security meeting between Nigeria and Cameroon, and it backs up a lot of rumors that we've been hearing over the past couple of weeks that there were some talks that were going on. There have apparently been negotiations going on behind closed doors mediated by neighbouring Chad. Now, what we're hearing from Nigeria are some reports that a government spokesperson has said that Boko Haram won't be given territory under the ceasefire agreement, but the government's not going to reveal exactly what concessions were made. But of course, right now, any deal at all which sees the release of those more than 200 schoolgirls will be absolutely welcomed by the Nigerian population, and not least by the families who've gone through this terrible ordeal. So of course, there's a lot of skepticism over the announcement of this deal. And I think we have to wait and see what details actually come out.
Meanwhile, the Hong Kong government is ready to begin talks with pro-democracy protesters this Tuesday. The city's number 2 officials said that talks will be moderated by the president of Lingnan University and will be broadcast live on television. Yesterday, pro-democracy protesters returned to the streets. Riot police used pepper spray in a fresh round of clashes after protesters regrouped following a pre-dawn clearance of a major protest zone in the Asian financial hub. Here's more from the i24 News desk.
Batons against umbrellas, which are the symbol of Hong Kong's ongoing demonstrations. Renewed clashes broke out overnight between pro-democracy protesters and police in the city's restive Mong Kok quarter. Only 24 hours earlier, authorities evacuated the encampments to little resistance. But after regrouping, some 9,000 people have reoccupied the area. New barricades have been erected. Roads have once again been blocked.
I want to say it would be impossible to solve the issue by clearing us. We will just come out again. What we really need is for the government to face us, to have a dialogue with us.
Increasingly under fire, officials agreed earlier this week to hold talks with student leaders. But the offer was received with trepidation, the conditions of the negotiations deemed unacceptable. The people are still demanding the right to elect their own candidate as Hong Kong's next chief executive in 2017. In the meantime, the central government watches on anxiously from Beijing.
Now, 2 German nationals held hostage by Al-Qaeda-linked Abu Sayyaf group in the Philippines since April were released and are now under the care of the German embassy in Manila. The 2 were captured while on a yacht in the high seas and were held on the island of Jolo, which lies nearly 1,000 kilometers from Manila. Police said local residents found the Germans walking outside Patikul town and brought them to the nearest police checkpoint. Before the release was confirmed, the spokesman for the group told a radio station the hostages were freed after the ransom was paid in full. A Philippine official refused to confirm this claim.
I have not come across any of the issues regarding ransom paid or what, so I cannot make any comment or on those things. Suffice it to say that the armed forces of the Philippines and other security forces do not and will not negotiate with terrorists and kidnappers.
And now to the latest from the battle against the Ebola virus. As the outbreak risks spiraling out of control, countries around the world are beginning to take extra precautions. Here's more in the next report.
Concern over the possible spread of Ebola has reached the shores of the Middle East, South America, and Europe. On Saturday, screening for the deadly virus began at airports in France, following the lead of the United States and Britain.
We are reinforcing security, but there is no miracle solution that guarantees that we can handle or immediately detect a potential patient.
Even the Peruvian government is taking precautions, with the country having organized a drill mimicking a suspected Ebola case. Israel, too, is preparing for the worst, with health agencies having run an exercise simulating the arrival of an infected person. But the most acute threat is in the U.S., where President Barack Obama has named a new czar to oversee the government's response to the disease. Meanwhile, a Texas health worker, possibly exposed to specimens from the first patient diagnosed with Ebola in the country, has been isolated on a cruise ship. The boat was denied permission to dock in both Mexico and Belize.
Once the ground had shifted to the extent where there were no talking about a next day operation and keeping the people on Belizean soil, it seemed to me that axiomatically my answer had to be no.
Global concerns over Ebola have intensified after 2 nurses in Dallas contracted the virus, whose latest outbreak has killed nearly 4,500 people.
And the U.S. military landed its X-37B robotic spaceplane at Vandenberg Air Force Base in Central California yesterday, ending a classified 22-month mission, which was the 3rd in Earth's orbit for the experimental program. The X-37B, a 9-meter-long winged craft that resembles a miniature NASA space shuttle, was carried into orbit for its latest mission aboard an unmanned rocket from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida on December 11, 2012. The spacecraft conducted unspecified experiments for 674 days, marking the lengthiest mission to date for the secretive program. Total program costs and budget line are likewise classified. That's all for now. Join us again in 20 minutes. I'm Shachar Peled. Thank you very much for watching.